Welcome to the Attack Action Podcast,
where we talk about friendship, fun times, and most importantly, flesh and blood. Here are your hosts, Taylor and Isaac.
Hello, Attactioneers. I'm here with my co-host, Jacques Frost. What's up, my friend?
We're doing a more of a kind of locals oriented interview this time around, talking to Justin about trying to get big tournaments and grow the scene in California here.
Heck yeah. Yeah. So Justin was the TO and organizer of the stream and all of that for the Battle Hardened LA, and more maybe less famously, but got his start with the So Callings down in Southern California. So we have a nice interview with him, kind of talking about tournament organizing and his experience putting on the Battle Hardened and starting up his own production company for games and events called Arcane Games and Events. So it's a great interview. Justin's a great dude, and we had a lot of fun. But before we get to that, we have some shout outs and a few other pieces of housekeeping to get to before we get there. So, Isaac, you have any shout outs?
I do not. I didn't know shout outs were coming first.
Oh, well, we don't have any news.
Fair enough. Well, so I don't know. Shout out Fable Hobby. Our only news, I guess, is that we are going to be commentating the Battle Hardened Portland, which will be taking place on the 13th coming up here. So clear your schedules. I know it's last minute, but you gotta, I don't know, book a nanny or something. And tune in for the Battle Hardened this coming weekend. We're very excited to commentate it and to see what happens in the meta. It's just so exciting watching this game at the moment.
It really is, and this is kind of our preamble before Lille happens, and even Singapore, the calling in Singapore coming up. So you can follow us on Twitter. I'm sure we'll post the link to the stream. Fable Hobby is also on Twitter. And if you are following any of the Portland players, perhaps they'll post the stream as well. So hope to see you in the chat as we entertain you for the whole day. We're pretty excited about it.
Yeah.
I would like to shout out Mara from Blackwing Studio. She does altars for Flesh and Blood and Magic and that sort of thing. And she's kind of been on a terror of podcasts and has been a joy to listen to and get to know through that medium. She has done, which I'm still waiting for, Mara. I know you listen to the show, so I know you're practicing for nationals and stuff, but you still have some Icelander altars headed my way. So I just want you to know I open up the mailbox every single day hoping to see that package. So, but shout out to Mara. She does altered tokens, which I've been playing with. And the Frostbite is particularly cool. See what I did there? So shout out to them. Further news or sponsorship, I might add. Pick Pass Pray is still sponsored by Fab Foundry. So please go follow them on Twitter. We'll retweet it on our Twitter and that sort of thing. The giveaway this time is going to be some store credit for Fab Foundry. And so usually On It picks a winner within the first 3 or 4 days of the episode coming out. So if you're listening to this on release day, don't wait around to get to that Pick Pass Pray, because you're going to get some cashola for Fab Foundry. And we really appreciate them. So go check them out. Also, my last thing before we get into the interview with Justin is supporting our podcast. So if you enjoy our content and find value in it, there's kind of three great ways to support us. One is to subscribe, review, and like everything we do. That helps us out in this algorithmic based world. So if you're listening on Spotify, boom, hit us with some stars. If you're listening on iTunes, give us a nice iTunes review, please. And I don't think Google does reviews, but just make sure you're subscribed. YouTube also. Then the other great way you can support us is through our Patreon. It's as little as $4 a month. You get access to the Discord and anything else we can figure up to pass out or give to you or that sort of thing. It's a great community. We're growing every month with that, so it's a great way to support us super directly. And then the most cost-effective way to support us is just tell a friend. So word of mouth is really great. So make sure you're out there being like, hey, you like Flesh and Blood? Do you listen to the Attack Action podcast? Well, you should if you don't. And if you do, you're also an Attactioneer, and now we're best friends for life. So great way to meet people and a great way to support us. So we really appreciate all that you do for us, the fans. It means the world to us. So
Totally.
thank you.
If you live in New Zealand, you can go pick at the LSS studio also until we get 10 spoilers per season. That's also free and just some way you can help out the pod.
Totally.
Sorry, I've just been sitting in silence too long. Back to you, Falcon.
Yeah. Oh, you're cut off. You're cut off over there. Oh man, that's so funny. Yeah, don't do that. I mean, do that, but I know it's winter in New Zealand, and I'm unsure where Legend Stories is, which city, and if it's too harsh of a climate at this time of the year, save it for summertime, baby. I don't know. Oh, okay. We've done actually a lot of podcasts today, so we're kind of tuckered out here. So we're going to let this interview that we did with Justin earlier today do all the talking for us. Thank you for listening and enjoy this interview. All right. We're here with Justin from Arcane Games and Events. What's up, my friend?
Nothing much. How's it going with you guys?
Great. It's going just great. We're really excited to have you here. It is a sunny California day for all three of us, which is rare because we live hundreds of miles apart in the same state.
Yeah, it's only like 100 degrees right here in LA, so that's not too bad.
Dang.
Yeah, I'm committed to the podcast. I turn off the loud air conditioner in the room, so, you know.
Oh, nice. I have to do that. Taylor makes me turn it off.
No.
For audio's sake.
Yeah, the audience makes you turn it off because they would be upset. We already have listeners complaining about your bird noise when your window's open, so
I know.
I'm sorry,
it's just
I'll tone down the criticism on the comment section. I'm sorry, it was a little weird.
It's too many birds singing.
Yeah, totally. It's too pleasant. I'm stuck in traffic. You guys are reminding me, etc. So anyway, everybody, Justin was the tournament organizer for the Battle Hardened LA that me and Isaac had the opportunity to be a part of the commentary team for that. So we wanted to have him on the podcast to get a bit of a perspective from somebody running kind of a I don't know, major event, I suppose, that is sponsored by LSS. So you not only organized all of the judges, the venue, but you also set up like the whole stream and all of the graphics and that sort of thing. So first, Justin, tell us, how the hell did you get into Flesh and Blood, and then how does that get into tournament organizing?
Yeah, so I got into Flesh and Blood with actually the first calling in Vegas, the one that Tyler won. I know, guest of the podcast, friend of the podcast. But
Mm-hmm.
it was around the time when events started opening back up and people started going to things. And I came from a Magic background, and I stopped playing a couple years ago. Just kind of fell out with the game and didn't really enjoy some of the cards coming out. And just life happens, that kind of stuff. So when Flesh and Blood rolled around, it was like, this is kind of interesting. I had a bunch of friends who were into it, and like in a good card game, everyone tries to bring their friends in. So I started hearing that from my friend group, and then exploring it. Then I saw the calling, and it was honestly, it just looked really interesting. And the thing that stuck out to me the most was just how it reminded me of the old Magic competitive scene. So at that time, they were sunsetting their competitive scene in Magic, and then Flesh and Blood kind of just popped right in and copy and pasted everything that they saw from Magic. And I know a lot of people at the studio have worked in Magic, participated, played, and kind of been in that ecosystem. So it had that same feeling to me. And so when I saw that, I picked up some decks, and I got into Tales of Aria was when I got in and did the pre-release, and then got hooked immediately. The funny thing was, I didn't know it at the time, but I was playing against someone in the last round. I'm like 1-2, and he was a really nice guy. I don't know who he is. I got to look it up. But after the game, I was talking like, "Oh, I really want to try this out. It looks really fun. The people have been really nice." He's like, "Oh, here, like take a card. It's a promo card, or no, it was just a card he pulled out of his binder, and he gave it to me. He's like, "Here, take this one," and it was in Lane Strike. And I was like, "Oh, it's kind of
Wow.
cool." Put it in my into my deck box. Didn't know what it was worth, and just like forgot about it. And then I
Throw it
looked
in
it
my
up a couple months
wallet,
later.
sit on it.
Yeah. And so that was like my first kickoff into the game, and like meeting the community, and really, seeing how different it felt. Different and familiar at the same time to Magic.
Yeah, definitely. I think with Vegas, everybody was like really raring to go. Like you said, with Magic kind of shutting down their pro scene, but also like coming out of the COVID lockdown. And,
Mm-hmm.
it was kind of just a perfect time for a game to like really blow up like this, especially with how much effort they were putting into making it happen.
Mm-hmm.
And good. I'm glad your friends tried to get you into it. It's up to all of us as the friends to listen to your friends when they pitch games and give them an honest go. Because
Mm-hmm.
sometimes it'll be Flesh and Blood, and you'll be, pleasantly surprised.
Yeah, totally. All three of us were there, and mutual friend Colin Honingman, producer of this podcast. So that's pretty cool. I remember the pre-release. I think the most notable thing about Tales of Aria, or Tales of Aria world premiere, I suppose, not even really the pre-release, was that they like messed up the promo giveaways or whatever. We were there for like 6 hours. That should have been for like 4 rounds of play. It was like double in length. And I remember being like, going back to the Airbnb, like, "Oh, we're so fucked tomorrow when it's classic constructed and the rounds are 50 minutes. Like, we're going to be here till midnight." But thankfully they ironed it out and got it together. But yeah, that was a incredible weekend, because that was like our like kind of final big event of the year. But it was like so nice to, it was kind of jarring being in such a big space with so many people after
Mm-hmm.
having been in lockdown for so long. So I think I will never forget that weekend and Tales of Aria, because of all of the monumentous things happening around everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
So, Justin, do you still get to play kind of as much as you want, despite being on the other side of things sometimes? And who's your favorite hero? We always got to know.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I am a Lucius player. To the chagrin of everyone who plays with me. Watching Tyler win, it was fun to pick up Prism because it did feel like the decks I like to play in Magic, which were play a board state, have lots of interactions, play on other people's turns. But I've transitioned to Dromai now, so everyone's a little less more friendly to me. Um,
It's a little less
yeah,
oppressive for now.
yeah. I mean, at an armory yesterday, I fought a little dirty. I knew there was going to be a lot of wizard players there, so I put in 3 Thamais. So,
Nice.
yeah, I guess I didn't get any points there. But yeah, with playing, I still try to play as much as I can because I think it's important if you're going to be running events for a game that you interact with the community and playing the game still and kind of getting that sense of being close to the ground. Because it's really easy to just kind of go towards, I think, running the event and not really playing day to day and kind of getting a feel for what players are thinking about that. You lose out on a lot of different small stuff. And I definitely got a lot of feedback from Battle Hardened of like the small things we did right and things we did wrong. It's like you would never understand that feedback or the compliments if you didn't know what those day to day things were feeling like for players. So
Yeah.
I try to get
I
out
mean,
there as much as I can.
totally. And the players can feel that as well, like it's 100% obvious when people don't play the game or aren't connected to the community and that sort of thing. And so it is nice to have that level of genuine interest into the thing you're also very passionate about. It's kind of like dating, I suppose. You're like, oh, you genuinely have interest into this other thing that I'm like into. That's very attractive. I would like to go on more dates with you. This is a metaphor, Justin, so don't get excited, okay? I know Christine, your wife, is a very nice person, so I don't want her to listen to this and think that
She's
we're
like, what
getting
kind of
fresh with
podcast are you
you.
going on to now?
No more podcasts for you.
But yeah, and it's like I've been on the other side too. Like when I've gone to Magic events or Flesh and Blood events, you could feel just like the other side of it where it's like, oh, this person knows what's going on. And even it's the small things, you don't pick up on it, but you can feel it when you're just playing in a tournament. And I try to make it out to as many events as I can. So like ProQuest, RTNs, I did a skirmish. Went 03, but we won't talk about that one. So we can define playing a little loosely on that side of things. But yeah, I think I just enjoy the game too. And it's just, it's refreshing and it's fun to play and just getting to meet people. Like that was the biggest thing for me is just, it's a vehicle to go and meet people in the community. Like in SoCal, we have just a huge player base and a lot of just honestly just too good at players. It's just they have to stop because I need to win sometimes, at least once in a tournament. So we just got to cool it down a little bit. But
yeah, if only all your tournaments were full of Blake Meyer, then it would be easy wins. But unfortunately, you have Tyler Horsepool and Andrew Rudin and
I don't know
et
if you hear
cetera.
it, but he's driving up to you guys right now to knock down your door.
Blake doesn't listen to podcasts.
Yeah, he doesn't listen to the cast, so we don't. That zing doesn't quite connect.
Yeah. I mean, I do hope that's a running joke forever now. It's just Blake doesn't listen, so I can say whatever about him.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, he'll start to have to be a listener just so he can defend his honor. That's how we're getting him.
It was very apparent to us that you really cared about the game and wanted this to be, or that to be a like a high quality production, because you cared. Just like kind of the polar opposite is, I've been to certain events kind of in the early growing phases of the game where, like the judges don't know the rules or the announcers don't know what the game is, or, just like certain things like that where you're like, I don't know. I mean, I still had a blast and it was still very fun, but you can tell it's just like somebody was hired to produce this and they're kind of doing the best they can out of the blue. But, on the other side too, I think it's just like so important for people like you to kind of take that leap, to to like put on a Battle Hardened at a high quality of production, in order to have, I don't know, there's people in the community that love the game so much on the like production end of things. I think will be very healthy for the game in the long run. So good on you.
Yeah. Speaking of that, so how the hell do you go from playing Illusionist to putting on the Battle Hardened LA? How does that happen? What are you, Isaac? Are you thinking like, how many people did he Arclight Sentinel on the way there?
Yeah, it's like board state, a lot of moving parts. He's been training for this day.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, if you cast Arclight Sentinel 1,000 times, then LSS gives you a call. They're like, all right, this person's committed. Let's do this. But it started actually kind of from a selfish place where I wanted to relive like what the old Magic the Gathering Pro Tour was and that competitive scene, and try and see how you bring that into Flesh and Blood from even just a small perspective. So we started with the So Calling, which was a small tournament that we ran at our local store. And it was just kind of something the first one was just to have players come and play during Nationals weekend who didn't make it or who couldn't make it out. And I use it as an excuse to like kind of meet a bunch of people and see how these tournaments are run and kind of go through it. And then we did the second one, and I wanted to do streaming because I wanted to learn how to do streaming and how do you put on a production and kind of go through and start reaching higher for something like, oh, let's see how close we can get to like a Calling or a Grand Prix or Pro Tour. And in doing that, I think LSS saw that and just reached out to us to, hey, you want to do a Battle Hardened? We've seen your events. They're firing. We've been working with them for like getting extra prizing. So I think us taking the initiative to put that on and just be like, we're just doing this because we want to. And we think it's a cool venture and we can give opportunities to like, that's when I just met Colin and Blake, who were the first two commentators for So Calling. And we just had a lot of positive feedback from the players who were just like, oh, we're going to the Pro Tour next week, and it's cool to get some practice in, play on stream, and kind of see all these different things moving. So it was gradual, but for me, it was learning about it and really wanting to push forward my knowledge of like the game and streaming and all these different parts.
Cool. Yeah, the So Callings were a big hit, because didn't you put on the first one when Nationals happened, right? For all of the local players that didn't get a chance to go. So I think that's very smart of you, very savvy. Well done.
Mm-hmm. So that's like, all right, I see you, checkmate, I guess.
And having a high quality stream is really important. I mean, like LSS saw the So Calling and gave you a Battle Hardened, and then as we mentioned on a previous pod, the production of the Battle Hardened was like was Calling quality, and hopefully they notice that as well, and we'll keep upgrading you to Worlds 2023.
Yeah, that's the hope. I've been just saying like, I want a Calling, I want something bigger, and we treated this as like a resume for us to be, we can do this, and we're obviously looking to upgrade a bunch of different things that we did for this because we felt happy with how it went, but we're always looking to go forward and like push the boundaries a little bit more of what's the production quality look like, different segments, and all that different moving parts going into it. And so hopefully it was just smooth on the outside looking in. But it was a lot of work from people behind the scenes and making it happen, like especially you guys commentating and flying down and hanging out with Colin and the rest of the guys and just experiencing the weekend with us.
Well, I wouldn't really call it work. I would call it vacation. Colin basically like cooked all of our meals, and then we just got to hang out and talk or play Flesh and Blood. For the other times, Colin was not making us food. So I would love this job if it paid more.
I thought we were gonna show up and have to prep a bunch of like time filler, topics and discussions and like pick, pass, pray, and games, like all of those things. And we showed up and you guys were like, no, we did all that already. You're fine.
Yeah.
So that was,
hopefully
it
it was
was
plug and play for you guys.
pretty luxurious. Yeah. No problem.
Yeah. Yeah. It definitely
And I didn't know it was
was.
like the prereq for commentating was a mustache. So I guess I'll have to let people know that's, you must have a mustache this long to apply.
I don't think Colin and Taylor would count my mustache as a real mustache.
No, because
I still commentate.
It's a beard. You have a beard, not a mustache. They're two separate things.
See,
You don't think? I mean, I guess you could then say I just have upper beard.
Top beard.
Yeah, top beard.
Yeah.
That's what we should have been, is the top beard bros or something stupid. Anyway, all right. I don't know. So Justin, you also started your own now production company based on putting on these events. So could you talk to me about the logic behind that, or the inspiration? You didn't want to just be Justin Guy. You are now Justin from Arcane Games and Events. So talk to me about that.
Yeah, it's in starting a production company, it's two-part where, like you said, it's just gonna. I didn't want this to be just a one-off thing that we throw and then we'll walk away. And the second thing is to help manage it logistically. Because there's a lot of costs that go into it, contracts and insurance and all these different things. So it just made sense to open up an LLC to kind of host all these things under it. And in opening it, we want to do more events, obviously with not just Flesh and Blood, but other games, and really hone that craft of what it looks like to put on an event and then improve upon it. Because we feel like there's a baseline of what you should be at, and then going above and beyond is like once you get to that level, then you can work on the innovative stuff of like what we think tournaments of the future should look like. And so opening a company just makes sense for us and gives us a lot more leverage and maneuverability and when we want to run events in the future. And so people know where to come and look for us.
Nice. So when you say events, what is the breadth of events that you would run, right? Like, we talking county fairs within board gaming only, like what exactly, what's the scope of what you're aiming for initially, and then you hope to broaden it, or what's your goal here?
Yeah, I think right now we're trying to stick with all the major card games and kind of reach out and go for those kind of events. So something similar to like a Battle Hardened size. We still have our So Calling series, which we're going to work on, an independent tournament series that we're still, in the early stages of planning, where we want to be like a tournament circuit that people can have their own, players championships and rankings and leaderboards and stuff like that. And so that's something we want to work towards as well. But we're sticking with card games and seeing where it goes from there, because we have that, expertise of players and people on our staff who have gone to these different events and run them and done them in different capacities, and we're kind of bringing everyone together. So I think that's the scope right now, but we're looking to branch out to bigger productions and things like the Pro Tour and Worlds. If people remember, like the old Pro Tours for Magic, they were full on productions with like 60, 70 people, overhead cranes, lighting, set designers, all those different things. So that's where I would like to aim for, because I think that's really interesting, and bringing like that production value to a game adds so much to it, because people care about the players and you build these storylines and you have, the game put on display for a lot of people to see and see like, oh, this is really serious and interesting and cool. And if you've never watched Flesh and Blood before and they sit down on a couch next to you, they can enjoy it as well, because there's just so much production value. And so that's where I want to aim to bring the game from my perspective, at the very least.
Yeah, that makes sense. And that's something you talked about a lot over the weekend, was really trying to provide a service for your really great players in SoCal and kind of highlight them, and that a huge part of the production was to get people to get to know the players, not so much just like kind of watch the games and be done, but hopefully, create some fandom around some stuff,
Yeah. Like from the second So Calling we did, the biggest win that I took away from it was Craig Pollock won the first one, the Scourge of Pasadena. And he went to New Jersey the week after for the Pro Tour, and people recognized him. He's like, "Oh, you won the So Calling," and he was just as confused as everybody. He's like, "How do people know me?" And he asked where they're from, and they're like, "Oh, somewhere in the Midwest." And he's like, "How's that?" I was just playing Flesh and Blood in Los Angeles, and now people recognize me. And I thought that was
Yeah.
the coolest thing ever because it's bringing players forward. Like when we talked about that with Colin and Blake during the So Calling, the second one, it was like we want to focus on the players because that's the thing that people tune into streams for and like follow is, oh, he's, he plays my favorite hero. He's one of the best to do it. So I'm going to go watch him play it. It's not really about the cards flying across the table. It's more of like, how does my favorite player play my favorite class? Like,
Right.
I love watching Craig play Bravo, and it's like, I know he's the Guardian guy. And so, like, with John Ho, he's Viserai. Just Viserai all the time. And when he plays on stream, it's like you learn something new every time, and you talk about him as he's from this era. He plays this all the time. His tendencies go to this. And, like, that's what players remember about a stream. Not like, oh, he just played a Revel in Ruined and then he killed them for a bunch of damage. It's like, how does he do it? Where does he come from? What's his backstory?
Yeah. And those sort of things are starting to take off. We're in this nice spot in Flesh and Blood where we are kind of a big enough game, but also small enough, right? That like John Ho's legend is that he never misses off of a Tome of the Arknight, right? He hits every single one.
It's a good superpower.
Yeah, totally. And so that's like a bit of his mystique, or like when we're in our like NorCal scene, people will say, "Oh, well, this doesn't really beat Viserai or whatever." But then some people will be like, "Well, I beat John on this deck or whatever." Or it goes vice versa. Like John's beat me 7 times in a row and this is a bad matchup for these heroes or whatever, So yeah, the players definitely, are creating a reputation for themselves for sure in our community, which is great because having events like this helps do that. And it definitely brings the game to the next level. And that's how you get your like LSVs and Reed Dukes and that sort of thing. So.
Yeah, and the game's been going on long enough now that we've had kind of enough time to create that narrative. Like, like when Kale McCreath comes on camera, it's like, this is a hostile meta for Guardians, but you better watch out if you're sitting across from him anyway, because he has it, he's figured it out and has a way to compete anyway. And it's pretty fun to see those players come up on stream.
Yeah, and we see it with like even the smaller heroes. Like we had Alan from San Diego, the Bolton player, the one Bolton player who shows up to a tournament and top 8s. Like this Battle Hardened in Vegas, and he just comes out of nowhere and he plays super quickly. All his cards are bent, and he's just destroying people. And it's really cool to see. Like, oh, we have specialists. We have, this player always plays this, or he's the guy who just picks up any deck and is good with it. And building those storylines as we get more events, I think, is really important because we didn't have those for a while where it was maybe a calling every once in a while or big events that were streamed, but now we're moving into a new era of Flesh and Blood where more events are happening, more things are, leading into qualifiers, and we have Worlds and we have Pro Tours and multiple Pro Tours now. So there's more opportunities for players to kind of reach out and flex their skills. Even though we know them on a local level, they're going to get access to a bigger stage now.
Yeah, totally. And who knows, like this time next year, me and Isaac might have someone on the podcast or maybe even meet someone at a tournament and they're like, "Oh yeah, we watched the like Battle Hardened LA and that's what got me into the game. It just looks so cool and that's why I have this mustache because it looked so cool,"
Yeah,
or whatever,
during the weekend,
and you go, "It's not a mustache. It's just a beard."
It's a top and bottom facial hair, not just top.
Yeah, totally. What were
Yeah,
you saying about the photographer who was great, by the way? I forget that gentleman's name, but shout him out.
Nick. So yeah,
Nick.
we're
That's
good
right.
friends, and I asked him to take pictures for the event, and I've been telling him about Flesh and Blood constantly, trying to get him into it and being subtle and not so subtle. Um, and he took pictures of the event, and he was like, "This is interesting," and he went and bought a Phi deck and a Joe My deck and took it home with him.
Sick.
And I consider that the big win of the weekend. I'm like, we can shut it down. This whole event was just to get you into Flesh and Blood. That's it. Everyone is paid actors.
Yeah, totally. That's
um,
funny.
but yeah, stuff like that I hope happens from this event. You know, just seeing like, oh, there's stuff happening in my backyard. And I know all these people. Like, oh, I used to play Magic with a guy and he's playing Flesh and Blood now. And that happens a lot
Mhm.
too that I've seen.
So, what did you feel like you nailed at the Battle Hardened weekend? And then what do you think is your place that you would like to improve to take it to the next level? Big question here.
Yeah. I think everyone went well and we have nothing to improve on. Um,
Okay, fair enough. Podcast
yeah,
over.
nailed it
Thanks
first
for
try.
coming. Yeah.
Yeah, so I think with us, we were really happy with the stream and that production value. And I think we got a lot of interesting comments from it where people were like driving home from the tournament, then they put it on in their car to listen to the stream. And I thought that was really cool. And I think just the people we had come out was, you know, a great introduction to a lot of the judges. I got to meet a lot of them. They traveled from all over the place, San Diego, NorCal. We had some people come in.
What's up,
And for a
Ichin?
lot of them, it was,
Yeah.
yeah, he's just all right. No, he was really great. And I think with us, the thing we realized is that the judging community on the West Coast is up and coming and growing. And so for a lot of people, this was like their first time judging an event. And so getting that experience for them was kind of really interesting to see. And I was happy to have that experience for them. And going forward, I think the thing we want to improve on is just the back end stuff, the more logistical things, like managing the judges better and kind of going through the tournament a little bit better. And you know, we heard a lot of feedback from players of like extra rounds and things like that, which looking back we should have done. So we're taking a lot of feedback in, and I'm looking for it. Like the compliments are great, but if someone has an opinion on what we did or you know what we could do better, I'm just seeking towards that. And so we heard a lot from like Ichin was really great on giving us feedback, having gone to plenty of big tournaments and judging and giving us perspective. So we definitely, or for me personally, I'm not shying away from that. I'm trying to find anyone who has anything bad to say about the tournament because I think that's just where you get better. It sucks to hear, but that's where you improve upon stuff because it's really easy to just like close the doors and just say we did a good job. Anyone who says anything, you just kind of brush off.
Right.
But we have this huge document of just things we've debriefed on and heard from players and things we can do better next time. And it's a very long document of just small things to big things to individual accounts. Like we had our fire alarm that happened, you know,
Yeah, totally.
which Yuchin said is not in the rule book, but eventually will be how to handle this in the future. But learning stuff like that, like we didn't know we had to account for that, but it's something we should account for. You know, what happens when something happens and you have to evacuate the venue. So it's all these things you learn from just doing it the first time. So that was my main takeaway is just like getting it across the finish line and seeing what happens and taking all the feedback from it.
Nice. That's a very healthy perspective. I will point out though, you guys really nailed like the event went off on time, which is kind of rare even for you know, like huge events and you know, big productions. So having the rounds move smoothly and the event complete like in a timely manner, not run until like 10 p.m. or whatever, is awesome. You know, so I think that is like a huge positive takeaway, or that's a huge win right there. Also, just the stream was top notch. Like the lighting was excellent. Everything was really smooth. All of that went off without a hitch. And, that's another thing I noticed from other, other events is those are two things that not even, the bigger pros or whatever have dialed all the time. So I think that those are two pretty huge wins. My one feedback to all tournaments, which I understand that time is tough, but if there was a half an hour lunch break at events, that would be awesome.
Agreed.
Yeah, and
but I know that that's very difficult.
Yeah, I mean, I think we could have done that because we ran so smoothly.
Yeah,
because we finished
Yeah.
early, and it was surprising to everybody. That was the one thing I got was like, well, the sun is still up, and we're almost done with the tournament.
Yeah, even with the fire alarm going off, for those of you who don't know, the fire alarm went off in like round 4 or something like that, like halfway through the round. And it was a logistical thing everybody had to deal with. So it was exciting.
Yeah, we got to see it live on stream. It was clipped plenty of times and sent to me after that.
Dang.
So that was fun.
You're like, yes, I know. I was there.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, someone said to me, like, did you see this? I'm like, I did not. I had no idea this happened. Yeah, it's funny, one of our scorekeepers, she went on her lunch before the fire alarm, and then she came back as it was happening. She's like, what's going on? What happened in the time I left for like 15 minutes?
That's funny. Okay, I see how it is. Scorekeepers get a lunch, but players and commentators don't. Okay. Let's put that in the bag.
Their own thing. Their union, the judges, so they get their own thing. Commentators will work it out,
Yeah.
Yeah, there was
no
like
need for union talk, though.
There was a Teamster meeting at the same convention center. We should have just gone over there and got the paperwork and got some paid TO, Wild. Also, wait, what? There was also another thing that happened that maybe is not related to the fire alarm. Wasn't there like a jewelry heist that also happened like outside of the convention center?
Yeah, so we had like next door to us was a jewelry convention, and from what I heard, there was a convention in San Francisco, and vendors are just basically moving from that convention center to Pasadena, and some vendors went in on like a Brinks truck and put everything in there, and on the way towards Pasadena Convention Center, got robbed, like Ocean's 11 heist rob. And it was like $150 million worth of jewelry or something. So it was like half the value of all the cards in the room at Battle Hardened LA.
Yeah, especially on Andrew Ruden's like deck. Yeah.
Well, my favorite deck that I saw was on Jarek's deck, which was the double Marvel deck, which is he would play the Invocation, which is a Marvel, and then he would take out a pile, which is another Marvel and Dragon, and put it right side up. And he had that for every Dragon and every Ashwing, and it was awesome. And I heard comments of like, I talked to him after, he's like, I'm sad you didn't mention it more on stream, because that's the whole reason I did it.
That's awesome. Yeah, I mean, that is a cool, as a person who has just started their hashtag Shine Life lifestyle, it is rather fun and addicting to have all of the shiny cards. And I'm just glad I have not caught the Dromai bug, because then I would just be forced to get all Marvel Dragons.
Yeah. Then you'd be in Oliver's camp where he just plays for the shiny cards.
Yeah.
It's all about the shiny cards.
Totally. It looks awesome in person, though. I'll tell you what.
Yeah.
Maybe worth it.
It's not so awesome on the wallet, but it's really awesome on the table. I'm in that loop now, so I'm slowly acquiring it.
Hell yeah. That's great. So, Justin, furthering on here. So as a event putter honor producer, that's probably the good word, organizer, tournament organizer. So what do you think, even for like the Channel Fireball streams, like what is kind of the next evolution for Flesh and Blood, like live play at these bigger events? Do we just like add in like a halftime show, like kind of the Magic Pro Tour stuff does, where there's like a group of people in a booth and then people who do the match live? What do you think the next level is?
I think for production, it's just being more player focused, like we talked about before. Of like, we tried a little bit with ours, where it's like at the top of the show, we highlighted players, like Tyler, Chris Iali, Craig, and doing more of that stuff, where it's like an ESPN broadcast where there is a halftime show and there's segments and perspective on all these new players coming up and who's up and coming, who won these RTNs and ProQuest. And when you get to that level where it's callings for regions, um, like LA, it was super helpful to have the commentators know all the people in the tournament,
Yeah.
because it's hard when you don't have that context. So as the scene grows, it's like getting those players and pushing them forward, where they may not know how to do them. They may not know how to do that themselves, but taking initiative to go and push that for their perspective if they want it. And I think that's where broadcast should be going, is more player focused. And they already have a lot of that with the Arsenal Pass guys, Team Covenant, and the Nationals champions, and Yuki, Tariq, all those players. But there's still plenty more who are right above that level who haven't quite converted yet.
Right.
But they're on these teams with players and practicing with them. So I think getting more context and knowledge of those players is where you'll get a lot of value on the broadcast, because people tune in to watch the people that they play with every week.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, oh, my friend's going up there and he's really sick and he's really good, and now he's on stream. So I think focusing more on that is like really important.
Yeah, I definitely hear you. I mean, that's like, we're in the era sort of, well, I can only really speak for basketball, but it's like, you're not like so much a Cleveland Cavaliers fan as you are a LeBron James fan, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or a Steph Curry fan over like the Warriors. Now, some people might get mad at me, or people actually don't know who those teams are, or whatever. There's the spectrum. But what I'm trying to say is that, like,
Mm-hmm.
the individuals on those teams are the product over the teams themselves, and like you've said a number of times now, it's like that's kind of also the product we're pushing when we're on stream, is not so much, it is the game, but it's also the players, and I think
Mm-hmm.
Isaac and me are actually rather well positioned for any West Coast big events to commentate on, because we live in the middle of nowhere between San Francisco and Portland. So we've been all over the place to go to play in tournaments, in Portland and in the Bay Area cities and in LA and stuff. So we know everybody.
Commentating.
Yeah.
We've been to a lot of scenes. Yeah, I love hearing.
We have to reach out to you. You're just in the middle of nowhere, and it's like, we need you to come out of commentating. Come and commentate again. You're like, I don't know. Is it?
Yeah.
I can't do it again. You're gonna have to convince me. And it's like, we have John O is playing again. Vince Ryan. I'm like, all right, I'll go.
I'll do it. I'll do it for Tao Tao.
One last job.
Yeah. Yeah, I love hearing about, you see players who are like putting up like good results, but just haven't convert like, top 8 of, or maybe the top 8 calling, and then you don't hear from them for a while, or, they're just like always under the radar a bit. But who are now like, again, it's been long enough now that sometimes they're like, like Isaac Crute or something is like pretty famous in his own right. Hasn't like won a pro tour yet or anything like that. But there's all these names that you hear about and you're like, all right, I'm going to watch out for them. They really got it. We'll see, but it's fun because since we started this podcast in deep COVID quarantine, when the game was like unknown, it's like really fun to have seen the evolution of the competitive scene and then having it grow enough that now there's all these names that you keep hearing about. And it's like, oh, well, I heard from so-and-so that this is the hot deck, or, I heard that, whatever. It's pretty fun.
It totally is. And Isaac, because you and Mr. Crute share the same first name, I thought you were going to have a
You
story
thought I was
about
gonna say
yourself.
me.
Yeah. This guy, Isaac Jessen.
Yeah.
Oh, God.
Does he have it?
Does he have it?
I mean, throughout the road to nationals, I just heard you guys kept saying that about yourselves over and over again. And I was like, man, these guys are about it.
Nope. But we did get one top 4 finish in one RTN, so we're not washed up yet.
No way. I'm never going to be a pro player. I get too distracted by fun decks and having fun. I'm like bad at being a pro player, but that's okay. So is there anything, that anything you've learned, or like you have a bit of experience in this area now? Is there anything you'd like to share with, fellow producers, or with LSS, or just with anybody who has aspirations of growing their local scene? Do you have any parting words or anything to impart?
Yeah, I think for us, when we started, it was like just the initiative to just want to do something cool. Like the So Calling was just born out of wanting to put on a tournament that wasn't something like a ProQuest or RTN, and it was something different. And we kind of just spun out from there of always looking to do something that's above the baseline of whatever is kind of default. So with the Battle Hardened, for example, streaming is not a requirement for running these events. But we put a huge amount of focus into it and effort and time and care into it, that we feel like it's stuff like that makes tournaments better. From a player perspective, it doesn't matter to them because they're playing in it, but for those at home and people watching it after and the players who make it on stream, it's like a cool thing for them. And walking away from tournaments like that, we're always looking to be, what is everybody else doing and how can we do it better? Like we had long talks about small stuff that you don't even really think about until you're at the tournament. Like the one thing we talked about doing for the next event, which we were going to try this event, but logistically didn't work out, was when we do deck checks every round, we bring the players with us. Because we think it's odd when you do a deck check and you just walk away with their deck and they're at the table and they're like, well, I hope my deck is okay. Which is the default, right? You just sit at the table, talk to your opponent and say, I hope they don't steal my deck. And then you just wait for your deck to come back in one piece, which, all the judges are great about that, doing that, but it's like the small peace of mind stuff. And so we're looking at like that granular level of like, what is the small stuff for players look like to improve upon for next time? So thinking in that perspective of how can we make this better, even though there's already things being done to kind of address all these things. Because that's how, as a community, we push everything forward.
I agree. That is for sure. That's a great wrap-up sentence to that. And that's how, as a community, we push those things forward. What if when you do deck checks, you give both players 2 just like commoner decks, and you'll be like, here you go, play with these. We'll be right back. Just like giving a kid some crayons and a piece of paper, like, here, draw until your food comes.
It's like
I would be into that.
You're in the lobby. They have that toy with the water, and you're just pressing the buttons.
Yeah, totally.
I'm actually into that, but they're like weird decks,
Yeah, totally. Like
and they're already
Talishar.
shuffled, so you just draw. You're like, what?
Yeah, Talishar, Azalea, and double Titan's Fist Bravo.
Or you make it agonizing. You give them 2 prism decks and they have to play the mirror.
Be done by the time we get back.
Yeah, totally.
And you don't lay on the table, you just throw it at them.
Yeah, totally. It's not even nice. Yeah. And it just has an index card with all of the stuff you need to say. You don't even say it. Yeah, that would be awesome.
Well, thank you. Very sage advice. It's good to hear from the the other side of it.
All right. Signature segments. So we'll start off here with pick, pass, pray. So Justin, this is a draft scenario. I'm going to read off 3 separate cards. Then we're going to throw it to you, and you're going to pick one, pass one, and pray one comes back around. Are you ready?
Absolutely.
Okay, first card up is Red Trade-In. So it pitches for 1, costs 0, defends for 2, attacks for 3. It is a generic attack action, and it reads, when you attack with Trade-In, you may discard a card. If you do, draw a card. If Trade-In is played from Arsenal, it gains Go Again. Our second card is Sweeping Blow Yellow. So it pitches for 2, costs 1, defends for 3, attacks for 2, and it's a Draconic Illusionist attack action. It reads, when you attack with Sweeping Blow, create an Ash token. Go Again. The Illusionists of the Ash Plains can quickly turn home ground to their advantage. Third and final card is Oasis Respite Yellow. Pitches for 2, costs 1, defends for nothing, and attacks for nothing because it is a generic instant. And it reads, prevent the next 3 damage that would be dealt to target hero this turn by a source of your choice. If they have less life than each other hero, they may gain 1 health. So, Justin, which one are you going to pick, pass, and pray comes back around?
Interesting. It's a tough one.
Yeah, because they all kind of suck.
You said it. I did it. I think I would probably pick the Trade-In because you do stay open,
Mm-hmm.
and it's a red, so it has some good value there. And I think I would pass the Sweeping Blow and pray for the Oasis to come back, because you can at least play those in the same deck. The Sweeping Blow yellows not that great because you really want a bunch of red Go-Agains and Dromai. So I think that's kind of what I would go for first take.
Nice. Isaac?
I hear ya. I'm going to pick Oasis Respite Yellow and pray for Red Trade-In. Neither's that great, but Oasis Respite is like it's like a utility card, right? It's great against Eastlander no matter what deck you are. It makes an Ash as Dromai. It functions pretty well. I agree. Sweeping Blow does not give you Go Again, so even if you make 2 Ash out of it, you're swinging for 2 Go Again for 2 cards, which is just terrible. And I do kind of like Red Trade-In. You only get the Go Again if you set it up, but it's just like oftentimes you're looking to arsenal a card anyway. So, pretty good utility card actually. But, having a couple Oasis Respites in your deck to like shore up, especially the Eastlander matchup is pretty good utility there. All right, Taylor, what's the real answer?
Well, I think you nailed it, Isaac. I think I value Oasis Respite higher than Red Trade-In, even if it is the yellow Oasis, because it's pretty applicable in every deck you run. Like Fi has a lot of 3 damage attacks. So does Dromai, and so does Icelander. So I kind of like Oasis Respite the best, assuming I'm not already in. Like if I'm already in Fi or Dromai, potentially, I might actually pick the Trade-In. But in this scenario where I'm unsure which one I'm actually in, I think there's a bit more value in Oasis Respite over Trade-In. Now, that being said, I think it's hard because Sweeping Blow, like all of the illusionists, like block for 3, and blocks for 3 are like always really important. But it's still like a pretty low illusionist pick, I think. Well, no, I'm sure it's pretty low on the on the scale of illusionist cards I would want to pick. So I'll pray that trade-in comes back around, and then we'll just pass on Sweeping Blow. So there you have it. Nailed it.
Nice.
I think I nailed it more, but it's okay.
It's totally fair. The listeners will be the judge of that.
We just say something different to, be different.
Well, when Blake listens to it, I'll ask him what he thinks.
Yeah, totally. Ask Blake what he thought of this episode. All right. Here at the Attack Action Podcast, we like to play many different board games, not just Flesh and Blood. And sometimes we want to share one with you in the hopes that you will enjoy it too. This episode, we have a guest. So this episode's board game from the closet is Justin's board game.
Yeah, so my favorite genre of board games is like bluffing and player interaction. So the board game from the closet for me is Skull, or I think it's more like Skull and Roses, depending on where you look. But it's a game that's kind of like Liar's Dice, where everyone's putting down cards and you're making bets against other players, where everyone's putting down cards and you try and see how many you could flip over without flipping over a skull. People have a couple cards in front of them and people are outbidding each other, and then it gets to a point when you actually have to flip it over, and then if you do not flip over any skulls, then you win. And if you do, you lose a card. And so the reason why I love this game is that the best description I heard is it plays how poker should feel. Where it's like you don't have all the math and statistics. It's kind of like you're looking at the person, you're soul reading them, and you're trying to make decisions based on, just looking at the players and what you have, and you're trying to bluff people. So that's kind of my favorite board games. My wife hates it completely because she's like, you can read me. All my friends are just like, anytime I pull out a board game, they're like, 100% it's going to be a bluffing game where we're going to have to sell to each other and negotiate with each other. And it's going to be Justin's having a great time and all of us are trying to survive. Like the Resistance is another favorite of mine.
Yeah. With your friendships intact.
Yeah. They just leave a little more broken every time.
I have not played this game, but I think I would love it. I love this kind of game. And I looked it up after you recommended it. So thank you. I will be checking it out.
And it's the perfect game for going to a bar and playing it, or going out for like dinner, because you don't even need the board game. You could just bring like coasters, which is like what this game uses, but playing cards, pieces of napkin. It's great. And you learn a lot about your friends and who are the bad liars.
Yeah, this is that's what the context in which I've played the game is, at a bar before. And it is perfect for that. In the person's copy who I played with, it was like all beat to shit and has beer all over it and stuff. Is a well-loved game. So great choice. Excellent work.
Thank you. And yeah, I just love talking about bluffing board games, so I can just keep going. But I think someone's already pulling me out, just like you can't keep talking about them anymore.
Feels like you should be a Dorinthia player, not a Prism player, all the bluffing.
Yeah, totally.
That's what I've heard.
Or Katsu, maybe. But do you ever play Malarkey? I played that when I was a little kid. Malarkey. It's like you get a prompt and each of you has to tell a story about like the origins of this thing or something, and somebody has the right answer and the rest of the players have to just like make it up, but then somebody has to like pick which one's correct, so you get bonus points for being a really imaginative liar, I guess. When I put it that way, it sounds kind of but it was pretty good. I liked it as a kid, and just speaking of another bluffing game,
I'll have to check it out. I mean, the one thing that I like buried the lead on this part, which was I'm also or still am like a magician. So like I've been doing magic for like 10 years, so I'm a professional liar in some degree too.
Oh, we should have opened with this
naturally.
Wait, so you're like talking like card tricks, rabbit out of the hat, that sort of thing?
Yeah, not the rabbit out of the hat, mostly card tricks, but yeah.
Wow, that's awesome. We definitely should have opened with that. What is it doing here at the end of the episode? The listeners at home can't see how wide my eyes went when you said that.
Well, they don't
See,
get
that's
to
how I
see
get,
the
like, a second
cameras either.
podcast.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah,
Justin
Yeah, there you
just
go.
disappeared and reappeared. It was crazy.
totally. How is that dollar bill floating in the air right now?
Yeah, it's just not great for playing card games because it's like everyone watches me now.
Yeah.
So you don't lead with it, you know. But I owe you a card trick next time we meet up in person again.
Oh, fantastic.
Sweet. Love it. I'm into it. Great. Well, thanks for coming on, Justin. It's great to see you again. I look forward to working with you in the future or seeing you get to put on other events. Hopefully me and Isaac can make it to the calling. That's what it is. Number 3. Hopefully we can be there. Anything you want to shout out or plug, social media or anything, now is your chance.
Yeah, I just want to shout out all the people who made Battle Hardened happen. Like all of our staff, the judges, the players, you guys. Like without everything coming together like that, it would not have been possible. So I think I keep reiterating that and just saying like Flesh and Blood happens because of the community. And it stays interesting because of the people who play it. So having more events like this and, you know, hopefully more people like me just wanting to do cool stuff for the community is something that people can take upon themselves in their communities. So I think going forward, just looking out for the next So Calling. You'll definitely hear about it on different channels. We're going to work with LSS and hopefully promote it. We're making it bigger and better every year. So we'll see what happens with the next. We have one coming towards the fall. So we'll see what happens with that. But I'm sure everyone will know about it soon.
Awesome. Well, thanks again, Justin, and we'll catch you next time. Goodbye, everybody.
Thanks for having
Look
me.
out for Justin out there. It's going to be a big name.
Yeah, he's a great liar and he's a magician. Thank you for listening. You can find us on YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram at the Attack Action Podcast. On Twitter, we are at BattleBroTaylor and at BattleBroIsaac. Shoot us an email, theattackactionpodcast@gmail.com.
If you would like to support us, like and subscribe, shop for singles using our affiliate link, or support our Patreon for as little as $4 per month.